All right, here I am back looking at our floor plan that we annotated in the last video. And something else that would typically on a residential project, something that we would include and annotate on a floor plan would be the dimensioning. But we're going to treat this like a commercial project, and we're going to separate the dimensions from the floor plans, which is why we already made a main floor dimension plan. If you go ahead and go over there to click on that, this is where we're going to add our dimensions. But before we start, we want to clean it back up so that it looks similar to our furnishing plan, so that it's nice and clean. Whoops, not our furnishings plan, our floor plan. We want it cleaned up visually so that we can start annotating it. So something I maybe would have recommended is maybe not duplicating the main floor plan to make a dimension and furnishing plan. You maybe should have done all of this first and then duplicated this view, because then you could have copied the room names and numbers, the room names at least, and all of the graphic settings that we already set on this plan would have been copied when you did that. But because we did it before we made those changes, none of that's going to be none of those settings will have been changed in these views. So let's use the view templates that I think I've taught you previously how to do this, but let's use view templates to help us clean up those two other views so that we don't have to redo all the settings that we've already done. So if you go to the main floor plan where we have it how we want it, and you right click, you can create a view template from view. And we don't need, this isn't going to be a permanent view template. We're just using it temporarily. So I'm just going to call it temp and click OK. And then we're just going to click OK again. So now if I go up here and I'm going to control click both my main floor dimension plan and furnishings plan, and probably even my enlarged plans, go ahead and control click them all, then right click, and we're just going to do apply view template. We're going to click that button, and then it's asking us what template would you like to apply. So we'll hit the temp that we just made and click OK. Now when we look at our dimension plan, you can see it didn't add the annotations for us. That's something you have to do manually, but it did change all the visibility graphics settings for us. You no longer see the reference lines. You don't see the floor patterns. The room separation lines are gone, are hidden. So now it's got us back to a good starting point. So that's a nice way to use the view templates to help copy over view settings, right? And we didn't permanently apply the template to these views because we did the apply command. You also have the option in the view settings over here, you can permanently associate the view template so that if you made any changes to that view template, it would make it to all the other templates. This is probably not making sense. It's a little bit of a complicated topic, but just know that's how you can copy over the view settings. And then if you want to, you can go into the view tab, and over here on the end, it says view templates. If you click that, you can manage the templates, and we made this temporary one over here. We can delete it now and click OK. So now that temporary one no longer exists. So it's not going to control anything anymore once the settings have been applied. Okay. So now we're at our dimension plan. And what we want to do is we're going to start dimensioning. So if you go up to the annotate command or tab, the first thing you can see is an aligned dimension. And if you click that, it takes you to the dimensioning command, and you can dimension lots of things. If you look right here, you can switch to linear, angular, radial, dimension. Align just means, align's the best to start out with. It's pretty generic. It just means that if something was at an angle, you could also, you'll also be able to dimension at an angle. If you only did linear, you'd always be forced horizontal or vertical, which isn't always what you want. So I just picked the lined command. And the point of dimensioning is to dimension the walls. Now, this could be a whole topic of its in and of itself on how you're supposed to dimension. Also, different companies do different things. If you're dimensioning masonry, you go right to the edge of the masonry. Some people, if you're doing stud walls, they like to dimension to the middle of the stud wall. I personally go to the face of the structure. So if you hover on this wall here, you can see it automatically wants to highlight the center, which is not what I want. So I am going to tab until it highlights this. This is the edge of the stud, the outside face of the stud. I could also pick the outside face of the wall, but that's not the best way to dimension something. You usually are trying to tell the contractor where to put the stud, so when they're framing the house, they know where it goes. So I usually pick the outside face of the stud. So let's just do the exterior dimensions of the house along the back. So let's just get the building. There we go. So here are the outside dimensions of the building. And then you click to let go of the dimension string. So if we look at the example on my drawings, let's go to a floor plan. Typically what happens when you pull a dimension string of the exterior of the building is there's 3 lines, 1, 2, 3, and they get less detailed per line. The first line is really, it's any edge of the building, and then it's also any opening in the building. And again, on a commercial project, if this outside wall was made of masonry, you usually dimension to the edge of the openings, like there. But in residential construction, in a framed wall, they like to dimension to the middle of the window or the opening. So if it was a door, you'd also dimension to the middle of the door. So that's what I've done. It's not important for this class which one you do. You just need to pick one and be consistent. That's the most important thing. If you want to do the edge of the windows, you can. But just don't do the edge of the windows on one wall, but then on the next wall you do centers. That's not correct. That's always wrong. So pick one or the other and stay consistent. So the first row, we're going to get everything. Openings and jogs in the wall. Then the second line is any jogs in the wall. That's the dimensions we just drew in our Revit model. And then the last one is the overall width of the building. So let's go back into Revit and let's do that for the back wall. Let's do the aligned dimension command. And let's do, so this we decided is our second row that we just did. We did all the jogs. So now let's do the first row. So everything. So there's the first wall, and then there's the center of the window. If you hover over the window, it'll try to snap you to the center. Then if you hover at this wall, we'll get the outside face. Then there's that door and that window. And then let's get the face there. And then this window. And then this exterior face. And if you move the dimension string around, you'll feel that it snaps a certain distance away. Revit has snaps so that your dimension lines are consistently the same spacing apart from each other. So you can kind of feel it if you move it around and then click to set the dimensions in place. So now let's do the last one. Let's open the dimension command. And now we're just going to go the full width of the building and put it on top. So now a contractor can quickly look like, oh, here's the overall width of the building, or here's where the jogs are, or now here when they're placing the windows, they can look at this line and know exactly where to place the windows. So if you were building this house for real, I would go through and make sure there's no 1/2-inch dimensions. I would come in here, I'd click the window, then I would just make this 4'8". I like to fix all of these, so 6'2", Actually, maybe 6'4". And then here it would be 6'1" would probably be good. And then 6'10" here. There you go. So now we have nice clean dimensions. The only other thing we look at is if there's anything running through dimensions. We hate that. So you can always click on the dimension string and there's this little dot and you can move the dimension over so that it's not hitting other lines. So now that looks nice and clean. We don't bother with the patio yet. I always consider that like its own thing and we'll come back and dimension it separately. So that's how you do one side. I'm not going to do that for the exercise. You guys can do the other 3 sides when you go do your activity, or yeah, in this week or this module's activity, we'll have you do that. So for now, we'll leave it at that. That's how you dimension the exterior of the building. Then you're going to dimension the interior. So what you're going to do is you're going to try to figure out, you're just asking yourself, have I given the contractor the dimensions for every wall in this house? If you've done the exterior, then all of the exterior walls have been set in place and the contractor knows. But then you have to find the interior walls that aren't dimensioned. So let's just go one by one. This wall, the contractor will know where to build this wall because you can clearly see it aligns with this wall. And this wall has a dimension already, or should. If you finish the outside dimensions, this wall would already be dimensioned. So that wall is already set in place and that wall is based on that wall. But do they know where to set this wall? Now this wall, they don't know where to set because there's no dimension yet. So we'll dimension this. Again, I'll go from the outside face of the wall, and on the inside walls, you can pick either side of the wall. You just consistently want to pick the same side. So we'll do the inside of the wall. And again, I'm going to move this wall so there's a clean dimension. We'll just make that 4 feet even. Okay, so now the closet can be built, no problem. The bedroom wall right here, that's easy. It just aligns with these 2 exterior walls, so no need to dimension that. But this wall doesn't have a dimension, so let's do that again. Let's go to the exterior face of the wall, and then let's go to that face. And then down here, typically if you were dimensioning a lot of walls on the interior, you would always pick the top side since that's what you already chose. But because it's an exterior wall, we're going to go to the outside face. And then we'll try to place those dimensions somewhere where they're not going to get in the way. So that looks good. So now that wall's in place. What about this wall? That one also needs a dimension. So let's use the dimension command. Let's go to the outside face. And then these vertical walls, if you remember, I like to pick the right. I've been picking the left side. So let's just continue to pick the left side of the wall, the framing. And here, it's kind of difficult. We could just leave this. In fact, let's just do that. That places that wall, and that wall's already placed, so no need to make another dimension. In fact, even here, if we wanted to, we don't need this dimension. Let's talk a little bit about editing dimensions, why we're talking about dimensions. See how these dimensions, if I click on them, I told you you can move the text if you want. You can move it wherever you want. You can also, if you didn't like having this window in this dimension string, if you accidentally clicked that on accident, you can always come up here with the dimension string selected. You can add or subtract things. So if you click that button, I can take the window out. I can also add other things, like if I want the edge of that door, I can add those in, or I can pull the center line out and then click in the blank area to finish. So now I screwed that up. I need to correct it. The other way you could do it is, you see how there's little dots on the end of these leader lines and in the middle? The end you can pull away from the building or closer, just so that it visually changes the leader line. But the center one, if you click and drag it, you can move that to a different item. So now I can move it to the center of the window if I wanted to. And now I could take this one and I could move it over here to the center of that window. So now the only thing I need to change is I need to get rid of this edge. So I'll click on the dimension string, I'll click the edit button, and I'll take that edge back off like that. So that's how you edit dimension strings. So on this one, if I wanted to get rid of this, I could click the add or subtract button and I could just re-click on that wall and it removes it. And then I just click into blank space. So either one's right. You could put the dimensions on both sides, but there's no need to, because if you've dimensioned this wall from one side or the other, there's nowhere else for it to go. So the fireplace is another thing we need to dimension. So let's grab the exterior wall and then we'll pick the top side and the top side. And that's really all we need. And then we need the depth of it, this wall right here. So let's click the face of that to the face of that. And there you go. And again, I think I would clean this up so that it's nice dimensions. All right, so that's almost every wall. You're going to continue that process for the rest of the building. I won't do that to save time in this video, but you'll want to go through and continue dimensioning this project. All right, so that's all you need to know for the dimension plan. And in the next video, we'll talk more about the furnishings plan.